we are all fresh and energized enough for this second academic session, that is session 2. And this session will be chaired by Ashish Thomas, our colleague from the Department of Environmental Studies. He is a very active, young, energetic colleague of ours who is always there to help us out whenever we need any kind of help in terms of technology. Now, and I think that he has also played a very active and significant role in the organization of this webinar. So this session will be chaired by Ashish. So Ashish, over to you now. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Rishiba ma'am, for those kind words. Welcome everyone. Welcome everyone to this academic session 2 of day 2 of this national webinar. I think we had a very good start to this second day's webinar, and we heard some very engaging sessions of Dr. Pankaj and Mr. Kalyan Paul. And then we had very two good papers being presented by Ms. Tahita and Ms. Numana. So I now welcome everyone to this second session. We have two speakers lined up for this session. Speaker 1 is Ms. Priya Rampal, and Speaker 2 is Ms. Aditi Das Khan. Before I start with the session, I would just like to remind that we would be clubbing sessions 2 and sessions 3 together. So the next session, that is academic session 3, will be starting soon after this session finishes. All right. And if we do that, I think we can finish off the whole proceedings by around 2:30. So Nidhi ma'am, if you can just show the next slide also of the two speakers. Nidhi ma'am?
Yes, Ashish sir.
Can you just change this next slide?
Okay, just a minute.
And after this, next. Yeah. So I request Ms. Shivani Bhatt and Ms. Ragini Kapoor also to be ready with their presentations for academic session 3, which will be chaired by Ms. Harpreet Bahari. All right. Thank you so much. So, ma'am, you can go back to the academic session 2 slide. Okay. So, our first speaker for today is Ms. Priya Rampal. She's a research fellow at Indian Council for Research on International Economic Relations. And she will be talking on a very important topic today, and because we can actually experience and see the impact of parali burning on air pollution that we are witnessing. So she will be talking about how to tackle parali burning and about the deteriorating AQI in North India. Over to Ms. Priya.
Thank you, Professor Ashish. I'll just share my screen.
Yeah, your screen is visible now.
All right. So first, I would like to thank Professor Bhagwan Kaur for giving me this opportunity to present something very relevant, especially to all of us who are in Delhi. I'm also grateful to SGND Khalsa College for giving me this platform. So without taking more time, I'll start. Before that, I'd also like to apologize a bit. There is a lot of construction happening near my house. So you might hear some background noise of machines, which are also adding to the AQI in some ways. So I apologize. I'll try to be as loud as possible so that I don't let that noise affect my presentation. So parali is basically stubble. This is the word that is used in Hindi. It's called parali burning. Rising AQI is the air quality index. I'm sure all of us are actually looking at our phones all the time to see what the AQI is. I do that every morning. I also get to know by my breathing how it is. So when I was actually in school, we used to talk a lot about chlorofluorocarbons and depleting ozone layer and the greenhouse emissions, and they are even more relevant today. So Professor Samuelson, who's called the father of modern economics, likes to say that economics is the study that employs scarce productive resources to consume and distribute commodities. Now, for consumption and distribution of commodities, wealth is something which is very important. But what about these scarce resources? As economists, a lot of attention is given to the cost of resources, but the quality and the deteriorating environment is something that has actually come up fairly recently in the whole context. And putting a cost, say, to clean air or a price to clean air and water is something which is very difficult. Now, a whole lot of countries actually emit greenhouse gases, and the International Energy Agency estimates these emissions. The sources of emissions are obviously vehicles, the natural gas, oil, other fuels, and agriculture is also a big source, and it becomes even more relevant, particularly in these winter months. So India is number 3 in the top 5 carbon dioxide emitters. But when we talk about agriculture and its contribution to greenhouse gases, so there are various ways in which agriculture contributes to greenhouse gases. The most important is livestock. So livestock emits a lot of methane, the nitrous oxide from organic processes in the soil, and the use of fertilizers. All of these lead to a deterioration of the natural resources. Now, crop residue and crop residue burning actually contributes only 3% to the greenhouse gas emission. So if we look at this graph, 3% is coming from the crop residue burning. But then why is this leading to so much pollution in the winter months? Now, the reasons are many. First, the temperature is low, so the pollutants actually remain low. They remain trapped in the atmosphere and do not escape. Then also the winds are such that they are northwesterly in their direction, so most of them actually come towards Delhi. And maximum parali burning happens in the states of Punjab, Haryana, Western UP, and of course Delhi. Add to it the fact that this is also the festive season, and then there are the crackers. So the Shara, Diwali, coupled with the parali burning and the vehicles, plus the low temperature and the wind. So nothing actually leads to lessening of pollution. Everything just adds to it. Now, the bigger reason why this parali parali burning happens is because of the process of harvesting. So earlier, the harvesting used to be done manually. So the person who was doing it could actually cut the rice from the root or very much below. So now, because of the mechanization, the machines actually leave 1 to 1.5 feet of the stubble on the field. Now, when this stubble is already there, the sowing of the next crop, which is wheat, does not actually happen unless the field is clear. So the fastest way for the farmer to do it is to just burn it on the field. Everything else is a little more expensive. And if the farmer has the field, then he or she would not worry about the pollution at that time. His main concern is that he should be planting his next crop, that is wheat, in that particular window of those 10-15 days. So now another reason why this happens is because a lot of these states, Punjab and Haryana, have a decreasing water table. And this is happening because too many subsidies are given to rice, which is actually requires a lot of water. So instead of irrigation, they want the crop to be dependent on rain. So therefore, the planting of the rice is such that it gets maximum irrigation through rainfall. That's why it happens in June, and hence it extends. So the harvesting extends till this time of the year, where the temperatures are not congenial for the smoke to go away. So I'm not actually blaming temperatures. Of course, everyone should be aware and these things should be curbed. But in the last 6 years, the things have actually become even more, they are worse than how they were before that. And you would know because most of us face this problem, especially in the capital. So now not only is it affecting our health, it is also actually affecting the soil. A lot of subsidies are given by the government for fertilizers. So nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium, these are the fertilizers and the elements that are needed for the crop to grow healthily. But the losses that occur because of the parali burning are also multiplied. So they are not only the health losses, they are also losses of these nutrients in the soil. So the whole of organic carbon, which is a major component of the soil, is actually burnt, and the amount of, actually lost due to this burning is close to 2.8 lakh tons or 250 crores. It is all destroyed during burning. So at the first instant, if you see, the government is providing subsidies so that the soil is fertile and the crop has a bumper harvest. But those subsidies actually are a loss with all this burning of the parali, because all these nutrients which were actually subsidized are also lost. So it is a double loss in many ways. Now these are the farm fires that were reported. I have taken this data from the Punjab Remote Sensing Center. So if you see, this is just the window between 21st September to 25th of October. So if you see in 2020 already in this particular window, the number of fires are much more than what they were in the previous 3 years. So after 2016, actually the government had put in a lot of effort, and farm equipment were also subsidized so that farmers could use those particular equipment which did not leave much stubble. So what we look at is the air quality index, and it is something which transforms complex air quality data such as PM10, PM2.5 into a single index value. So what we usually see when we check our phones is AQI based on PM2.5, which is particulate matter 2.5, and this is the major pollutant at this time of the year. Now last year, the pollution levels were not as bad as this year because construction had been banned. And as I witness every day that the construction is actually increasing. So this has happened because of the lockdown that was imposed earlier. And because the economy did lose a lot of income, they do not want to stop construction this year. So it is continuing. Which is obviously adding a lot to the pollution. So this is the range of these pollutants, how much is acceptable and how much is not. So if you look at PM 2.5, anything above 120 is very poor or severe category. So this is just PM 2.5, this isn't AQI. So I have tried to map these, the PM 2.5 in Haryana, Delhi. So you see at all the times it is above 150. Punjab, UP. So these are specific stations that I took in Ludhiana in Punjab, Lucknow in UP, Bahadurgarh in Haryana, and RK Puram in Delhi. So all of them, the PM 2.5 is above 120 milligram per meter cube. Microgram, I'm sorry. So the share of parali burning, so this is the pollution in Delhi. And if you see, so this graph I have taken from the urban emissions website. So open fires are 18.5%. So in the news, actually now this number percentage has even increased further. So this side took in the end of October. So now I think it is above 30%, the contribution of the open fires. Yesterday day before yesterday was particularly bad. The reading was even above 900 or 999 in some regions, which is something which can't even be recorded by the machines. So now what are the potential solutions and what can be done? And it's not that the government isn't trying or the people are not aware of this, but yet we see it's the same cycle that repeats itself every year, starting October or mid of October. So burning can actually be avoided if we do away with subsidies for these particular crops in this region. So rice, maybe if we do not give subsidies, then people will not grow it, so there won't be any stubble. But the other problem is that minimum support prices are given for some of these crops, and that has been given since 1950 or when the planning started. Green revolution happened with wheat and rice. So that actually is not an option at all. It will lead to a huge backlash, and people are not very congenial to the idea of suddenly changing their cropping pattern. What they grow is what they want to grow. So the IARI, that is the Indian Agricultural Research Institute, has come up with some capsules which are actually made up of microbes. So these capsules are called the Pusa Decomposer, and 4 capsules are available in a pouch. They are available for ₹20, and they make a 25-liter solution which can be used on 1 hectare. So now there is a process that you have to mix it with jaggery and 50 grams of gram flour, and then keep boiling it, and then ultimately you have to go and spray it on the field. And within 15 to 20 days, all that stubble will actually convert into compost. So this is something new which was tried this year. This year in Delhi, this capsule was distributed to a few farmers. Now I saw a few videos, and it seems that the capsule is effective, but this was only a pilot as of yet. And in Punjab, so I know a few farmers in Punjab, but the capsule has not even gone there because of the protests. So people are not yet aware of this. But if this is something that can work out, it is an economical option, and I will talk about the economics of it later. So the other options that are actually available so that this does not happen is also that the parali is used to produce electricity. So the NTPC, the National Thermal Power Corporation, actually offered to buy paddy stubbles or parali, and they cannot use it directly to produce electricity. It first has to be converted into some pellets. So now the costs and the time and investment to use these pellets is very high, because when these are put in they can't just be, so the parali cannot just be put in the thermal power plant. Things have to be changed. So for that, so even though the requirement is large and it might be able to use all that parali, but the costs of transporting them to the NTPC or the 6 thermal power stations would be very high. So the government always has this thing of weighing what it can do in an economical way, what is more important, because there are so many things that it is responsible for. So because these costs are high, some villages in Punjab actually started something called a gasifier, which was a small mini plant in the village where some of the parali could be used to produce at least some electricity for the village, which could contribute, say, 30 to 40% of the whole village requirement. So now the center has also offered subsidies for equipment. So so last year, the amount for equipment was ₹1 crore 150. And subsidies for equipment were encouraged. So the government said that it would contribute about 50% to some of these equipment. I'll discuss a few of these. So potential equipment, reaper is one. So like I said, some of the machines leave a stubble of, say, 1 foot. So the reaper would leave around 5 inches. So even if the burning is there, it would still decrease, because there is no way that so there are actually some ordinances in place and some fines that if somebody burns parali, they are fined about 1,000 rupees for a 1 acre field, 2,500 for a 2.5 acre field, and so on. So it keeps on increasing. There is also a proposal now to introduce a law which would see parali burning as a crime. But people actually do not stop with the fines. They did not, because they said, okay, even if we are burning, we are free of the stubble. And if they are charging 1,000 rupees, then 1,000 rupees is something that I can afford. So the easiest way for them still was to buy a matchstick and set fire to the stubble that was left. Because all of these equipments, there is something called a happy seeder, which actually costs about 1.5 lakhs. So now to expect a small or a medium sized farmer to buy something that is so expensive is also something that cannot be expected or even justified. So the trick would be to maybe identify some rich farmers who are able to buy the machine and then rent it out to others who need it. So the problem here is that first the package will need to be cost effective. They should be able to rent it out and then maybe make up at least the cost of the machine. But the other challenge is that everybody will need that machine in those 15 to 20 days. So that is another problem. Then there is a way in which the parali can actually be, some of the equipment, actually the mulching happens. So it just converts, so it does not require the stubble to be removed. It just requires a mulching or a mixing of that stubble in the soil, because that stubble is fertile, as I already discussed. So it contains a lot of carbon, nitrogen, and these nutrients. So adding that to the soil would actually increase its fertility. And since there is some moisture content also in that stubble, then it will also reduce the need of one round of irrigation per year. So then there is the super straw management system. So these systems are actually capable and they are profitable, but the initial investment is huge. Also, the training that is needed for using these equipment is something that the government needs to work on. So this is what the happy seeder looks like. On the right side is the happy seeder, and that left is the super straw management system. So these are what the machines look like. So you can see that they are really big and they would be so expensive, and a poor farmer has no way of affording it. He or she can actually rent it out, but even to rent out the machine, it has to be available. So this is just a comparison of costs. So these are approximately the land in million hectares under rice. So in Punjab, it is about 3 million hectares. Haryana 1.3, UP is about 5.6. So let's consider that the total land under rice is 10 million hectares. So the parali burning will happen in this part only. So the cost of that capsule, which I spoke about, the Pusa Decomposer, is ₹20 for 4 capsules. And the approximate cost of then using this for about 10 million hectares is about ₹2 crores. So this year the government allocated 4,400 crores. So that means that the capsule, if effective, would be needing 0.5% of the total allocation. Whereas equipment like happy seeder, so Punjab itself would require happy seeders, about 25,000 happy seeders. That's just Punjab alone. So that cost would be ₹400 crores. And equipment subsidy, like I said, was ₹1,150. So that is 50% of the equipment subsidy would be required by the state of Punjab alone. So as I see it, there is a chance if the capsule is successful, and it probably is, but we'll know only later. And if it is successful, then it is the most economical way in which the farmer can use it on the field and avoid this parali burning. Then there are the other uses of parali. So it can be used for fodder for cattle. And now the reason why they don't use it is because when they were doing it manually, they could cut it at a deeper length, and that is the part which the cattle actually eats, because that has more moisture and it's edible. So with mechanization, even this fodder is not possible. It can be used to make bedding for cattle. Mushroom cultivation, this parali is actually very good for mushroom cultivation and also profitable. So they can also be used as biofuel and electricity generation, organic manure, because they are rich in nutrients. And there is a proposal for using them for paper and board production. So now actually a lot of rethinking is required on how much subsidy to give to each crop, how to maybe discourage the cropping of rice without any backlashes. Then weigh the options of what we want to give priority to, because the reason that rice planting is delayed is that they want it to be rain dependent and want to conserve groundwater. But is it worth the cost of this bad air that we all have to breathe? So alternate uses, I already discussed in the last slide, and subsidies should actually be directed towards how the farm equipment needs to be used, and conducting training and demonstrations for the right usage of these farms, and implementing this law against stubble burning strictly. Thank you. That's all I have. Any questions would be welcome.
Thank you so much, Ms. Priya, for a very well researched and scientifically put forward presentation. Uh, it's, as you said, it's a very relevant topic that we are discussing, and you very rightly put it. Like, in the mornings today, almost all of us, start with checking on the phone. What is the pollution level today? Can we go out or
Yeah.
not? Right? So that's become part of the behavior, especially during the months of October and November. So thank you so much. I think we'll take the questions together once the second speaker also finishes with her
All right. Okay.
presentation.
Yeah.
Thank you once again. And I now introduce the next speaker, Ms. Aditi Das Khan. She's a PhD scholar at Jamia Millia Islamia, Delhi. And she is going to speak on a very interesting topic, and that is storing animals, some reflections on select short stories.
Good
Over to
afternoon,
Ms.
everybody.
Yeah.
Sorry. Good afternoon, everybody. Respected chair, sir, I'll apologize because I'm not having a good time with my network or my laptop today. So is it possible that I switch off my video? I mean, I can switch on later after I finish my presentation, so the audio is not disrupted.
No issues, no issues. You can do that.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you so much. Okay, I'll begin with my presentation right away. So my topic says storing animals, some observations on select short stories. I have selected 3 short stories from Shumana Roy's edited collection of short stories on animals by Indian writers called Animalia Indica, which was published last year in 2019. So this paper will follow the trajectory that I mentioned in my abstract. I'll give a general introduction to the field of animal studies, which is perhaps as not talked about in our part of the world, and then proceed to literary animal studies, and which will be followed by my observations on the select stories and conclusion. So to begin with animal studies is invested in recognizing animals as legitimate beings with consciousness and interiority. So we try to consider animals as sentient beings who have agencies of their own. So there have been a number of theories by classical thinkers and even later where animals are not thought to be conscious, or either they are semi-conscious beings without any sort of agency. For instance, you have Aristotle's great chain of being, where animals occupy the lower rungs. Even in cases where animals behave rationally, they are thought to be acting at the directions of the larger God or universe, which is irrational. So there is heterodirection. So you are attributing that agency not to the animal's rationality, but to some other larger scheme of things. And Heidegger believed that animals could not experience death. So there are a number of such theories. I mean, animal-human binary is the ultimate binary. There is nothing as other to us as animals are. So major works in this field began to be produced in the 1980s. You have Tom Regan, who writes A Case for Animal Rights in 1983, if I'm not mistaken. So the obvious problem that arises in case of animals is that of language. Animals do not express themselves in human language, and this limits our access to their perception. However, we must try all means available to us, and especially our imagination. And this field, again, once again, this problem posits the very nexus between language and violence. I mean, language becomes our one of the points to exclude animals from considering them as sentient or legitimate beings that we must engage with. As Carrie Weil, a noted scholar in this field, has noted, if animal studies has come of age, it is perhaps because animals have become the limit case of theories of difference, otherness, and power. So I'll come to animals and literature. Animals always had marginal presences in canonical literature. So, for instance, we have Merrylegs in Hard Times, who stays with his masters till the very end, and despite being beaten by his frustrated master in Dickens's Hard Times, we see animals have made many disruptive presences in text where they are not the protagonist of the story. T.C. Baker, who in his book points out that relegating animal characters to the margin makes the text incomplete. Nonetheless, even the marginal projection of animal characters, in the marginal projection of animal characters too, one may get a sense of the larger world, which is shared by humans with other creatures, and where human language is not the sole signifier. Also, this project is concerned with real relationships between animals and their companion humans, and it is not concerned with text where animals are the metaphors or conduit to shed light on a larger preoccupation. I mean to exclude the animal farm sort of text where animals shed light on, say, the larger human anthropocentric political affairs. However, this distinction, I mean, this dualism might be problematic, and I can come to that later. So something that must be remembered is one of the earliest writings that came into about animals, whereby ethologists and scientists who were engaging with animals on a daily basis, and they were trying to record the behavioral characteristics and different scientific observations about animals. And then the question comes, why must we write about animals? I mean, we as literature department, as scholars of the literature department, sort of prioritize writing and reading over other engagement. I mean, by reading and writing, I also include visual text, be it films or others, documentaries, etc. So zookeepers have written that writing is not the most exciting part of engaging with animals. I mean, of course, if given a chance, they would rather look at an endangered species or go on an expedition. So, but nonetheless, writing is one of the ways of negotiating the heterogeneity of our planet. And therein comes the idea of zoopoetics. It must be remembered that zoopoetics does not simply refer to texts about animals. It rather aims to challenge the epistemological hierarchies of looking at how text and bodies inform each other. So zoopoetics has been a subject of much debate, like any other term in literature. And Aaron Moore, in his essay, has pointed out to the idea of co-making of a text. So the term poesis, as Philip Sidney would also tell you in his Apology for Poesy, is to make. So Moore sees animals as actively co-participating or co-producing, co-making a particular text. So whether it be a real or imaginative association with animals, animals are given an agency to participate in the making of that particular text that we are reading or writing. So there are different strategies that authors adopt to write about animals. Some shift from their urban location to rural areas where they can be closer to animals. Some indigenous writers also locate their totemic spirit animal to guide them. Critics have pointed to the need for extended cells where we must not inhabit one but multiple bodies, and the perspective of trainer or domesticator must be discarded because that comes from a certain sort of a power relation, but that might not be entirely possible to do. So writing about animals entails that we have a shared sense of precarity and vulnerability. For instance, Nilanjana Ray, who has this beautiful novel about cats called The Wildlings, has thanked Friendico's animal shelter and veterinary doctors for providing us her a sort of heuristic experience with animals. So these are just general observations. These are by no means the strategies adopted by the stories I'll come to here. So without much ado, I'll come to the stories directly. So my first story is called The Elephant at Sea by Kanishtharoor. So in this particular story, an elephant is transported all the way from Kerala to Morocco because the Moroccan princess is fascinated with the picture of an elephant at an Indian embassy function. So to satisfy that whim of the princess, an elephant makes his journey to Morocco from Kerala. So the elephant's mahout, who is much attached to the elephant, also travels with it. Am I audible to everybody?
Yes, you are.
Makes his journey to Morocco, and this mahout who accompanies him is much attached to the creature. So the second secretary or the diplomat or the official at the embassy is now confronting this weird, unprecedented situation. Because nowhere before has an elephant been made to travel this far to satisfy the whim of a princess. So in the concerns, because the mahout is always with the elephant and so deeply attached to the elephant, the mahout worries that the elephant will become lonely once he leaves the elephant in Morocco and returns to Kerala. So this particular concern of this mahout points towards the psychological needs of animals. So animals are only thought to have physical needs like food or water, but like the second secretary at the embassy, we often fail to realize that much like us, animals too have emotional needs. The second secretary thinks that the Mahout should be more than happy with a fat paycheck and a plane ride back home. The second secretary thinks who in his village had got such luxurious treatment of being at this embassy and getting to getting to see this foreign land and get to travel back home in an airplane. But the second secretary fails to understand that affective bond between Mahout and the elephant. One can also see here, as in the other stories, there is some distancing of the animal from its natural umwelt. I mean, one wonders then whether only by distancing the animal from its natural surroundings can we study human-animal relatedness. So we intrude upon non-human spaces or our shared spaces as researchers, exploiters, poachers, or trainers. Then a thought-provoking question becomes in these stories is the animal-human bond then enforced? So an important observation in case of Mahout's relationship with the elephant is worth noting here is that the Mahout himself is not unaffected by anthropocentric doubt. Though he shares a very deep relationship with the elephant, he worries about its psychological as well as physical well-being. The Mahout himself finds wondering about the nature of self. I mean, does the elephant has this nature of self? Is the elephant self-aware? So when the Mahout at this golf arena, and he begins to think that if the elephant feels transformed while looking at its reflection in a pond, does the journey transform the elephant? And then he punctures that imagination of his, and he says, and I'm quoting, maybe it was presumptuous of the narrator punctures, presumptuous of the Mahout to think so grandly of the elephant's capacities, its self-awareness, and its very sense of possibility of self. On the other hand, the second secretary, who unlike the Mahout possesses an encyclopedic knowledge of the elephants, he knows the factual details about the elephant's capacity to sense thunderstorm through its feet and their ability to recognize reflections, etc. The Mahout has a more heuristic knowledge of elephants. So Mahout has a more heuristic knowledge of elephants, but nonetheless, both their knowledges might be insufficient when dealing with an animal, because Thomas Nagel in his paper, What Is It Like to Be a Bat, brings out the insufficiency of mere factual knowledge about an organism, which is available to our perception. And he says that every sort of consciousness, no matter how much we try to understand an animal, it is not sufficient. We will not ever meet the sufficient standard of understanding, because our imagination is only limited. And even if we are to try and imagine the way bat moves their what it is for a human to be a bat and not for what is a bat to be a bat. So while the Mahout might have spent more time with the elephant, and both the second secretary and his perception of the elephant's world will always be limited. So this brings out the ambivalence of that relationship. Another and important observation would be that the Mahout at the end of the day is commanding the elephant, and he takes much pride in his profession. The Mahout believes that it is one's confidence in one's command that makes the elephant follow him. And I'm quoting here, he believed that the command was in his blood. The Mahout was raised to ride elephants, as was his father, and as was his father's father. And as we knew all males from all their lines snaking back to some letterless past where man first wrestled the beast into obedience. So there is an obvious connection between masculinity and violence made here. At the end, the Mahout's concerns are vindicated, because we see the Mahout disappear and the elephant being extremely lowly. The princess is back from Paris, where she had been for her higher studies, but she no longer has that childhood wonder for the elephant. And so they take the elephant to a beach where he's happy and they enjoy watching his antics. But no matter how much the elephant thrusts itself into water, he's pushed back by the waves. And this shows his loneliness and the emptiness of the elephant's heart without his companion, the Mahout. And this sort of foregrounds the intense emotional relationship the Mahout shared with the elephant. The next story is called Bulbus. This is a kind of a long story which is very difficult to be summarized here, but this is a story where a bulbul parents, a pair of bulbuls, build a nest in the narrator's garden. And the story revolves around human intervention and desire for explanation. So the narrator is a very observant person, and he time and again tries to intervene with the best possible intentions, but somehow that goes awry, and then the consequences are not as expected. So narrator is a keen observer, and he gathers considerable knowledge about the activities of the bulbuls by carefully observing them. By looking at the bulbul cheeks, the narrator has a renewed understanding of Kashmiri proverb, one whose eyes has not yet been fashioned. And this is an interesting moment, because it is only by looking at these bulbul nestlings that the narrator completes his understanding of a proverb he has known so long. So as seen in this instance, the nestlings help the narrator fathom the depth of a proverb belonging to human language. The non-human other simply does not become the object of human knowledge. They animate and renew our understanding of our own selves and language. Human language, which had been a point of exclusion for non-human, finds complete understanding only by the aid of the non-human. So this is kind of ironic here. And in the process of this observations, the narrator repeatedly seeks to understand bulbul behavior and explain activities and emotions. And while doing so, he keeps shifting his perspective from a human being to a bulbul, and from bulbul back to a human being. So sometimes he scolds himself from the perspective of bulbuls, and he wonders, the bulbul must be wondering why the narrator must spy on them. There are no performers to entertain them. They're only going about their usual business of bringing their young ones up. And like any other human being, too would give that amount of care and time to their young ones. So the bulbul might feel agitated by the narrator's constant intervention and spying. So at another instance, when a female bird dies, the narrator is certain that it has to be the mother, because the male bird, to narrator's perception, abandoned the progeny because he was seduced by another female bird. So the narrator admits that all this was my feeling. There was no way I could prove this with a scientific experiment. He could not perhaps prove that it was the female bird which died, but by my observation of human behavior told me I was right. So that perspective, as I say, kept shifting from bird to a human and human to a bird. So once the narrator has this irresistible desire to feed the bulbul chicks, and he attempts to feed them where there is no need to do so. The parents were already feeding their chicks. So the chaos that then ensues sort of disintegrates the bulbul family, and the bitter realization dawns on the narrator and to us as readers that it is only our human hubris which makes us think that we can intervene with some sort of as saviors of the natural world. And every creature, be it big or small, is equipped with skills to do the best for itself. And the narrator further later writes, when one of the bird dies, that birds of air can only articulate in joy, and sorrow makes them dumb. At this instance, I want to bring in this particular point that we have only set perceptions of what it means to mourn. For instance, he thinks that bulbuls can't mourn, or say a dog can't think, or because we as humans try to match animals to our own perception what is to think mean. For instance, we do not think or write the way dogs do. For instance, there's this book called Suki by Suniti Namjoshi, which is the memoir of a cat. And in that book, the author asks the cat, what would be the poem that you would write if you would write? And the cat says, being a cat, I would not, writing is not as important, to me as it is to you. So we need to constantly rethink these categories that we have understood in very anthropocentric, reductive terms. So the next story is called The Copper-Tailed Skink. It is by Manjula Padmanabhan. And this story is about a biologist who specializes in skinks. And she manages to capture a rare female copper-tailed skink somewhere in Mysore. And she hopes to carry that as a specimen abroad, and also names it. Something that she's not supposed to do as a biologist, because she's supposed to be very objective towards her specimen, but that an affective relation develops, which is quite contrary to the expected situation. So as we know that as I pointed out earlier, any sort of knowledge would be insufficient in case of even in case of this biologist. She looks at the skink and supposes it to be a virgin, and she's proved wrong the next morning when the skink has eggs in its cage. However, the eggs turn out to be unviable, and this brings her back to her own situation. She has been trying unsuccessfully for a child with a partner, and they have decided to try only till she is 42. If not successful by that, then they had planned to buy terriers or plant bonsai. So their academic commitments have kept so far interfering with their reproductive lives, and somehow their last attempt is not successful as well. So the protagonist profession of a biologist is interesting here. As I pointed out earlier, some of the earliest texts about animals were written by ethologists and biologists who were interested in recording the quotidian activities of their objects of study. Similarly, the protagonist, a famous zoologist, zoo biologist, Henry Heidegger, found himself unable to work with dead animals or specimens. So a lot of biologists who are unable to dissect their animals, as we see in these records by biologists. Similarly, the protagonist too is unable to objectify her object of study. She ends up developing an affectionate relationship with her object of study. She calls the skink Lizzie. She tries to find a mate for Lizzie so that she can have a child unlike herself. Although it must be noted here that the skink is unbothered by a mate and happily keeps chewing the moths even as her species is endangered. So again, I mean, this is a story about undoing any sort of assumptions about our lives and about animal lives as well. So we have to be very unassuming while dealing with animals and ourselves. So, however, Madeline thinks, they were hoping to carry the specimen back, and however, later she thinks that it is unfair to deny the skinks any reproductive opportunities because they're unable to spot a male skink. And her husband Jeremy tells her that it is not mate if two skinks do not mate. And he reminds her that a biologist cannot afford to be emotional. And such a reminder is once again important because whereas in this particular case, because the protagonist has become quite emotionally attached to her captive. It must be noted that this fellowship sort of thrives with the skink, and all this while she has this disgust for a local research assistant who is called Mr. Rao, and she finds Rao's English to be atrocious and is annoyed with his interest in her personal life. Even as she goes to visit Rao's wife in the maternity ward, out of courtesy, she feels out of place amongst other women and leaves as soon as possible. She's furious the way the country is obdurately holding on to its traditions. Even as she realizes her thoughts border on being racist, she cannot help herself. In such a situation, the encounter and the subsequent bonding with Lizzie is without presumption arising out of a privileged position. So, I mean, she finds it's easier to bond with Lizzie than with her research assistant. She shares her grief with her captive, and even in the depths of desire, Rao finds her crying in front of Lizzie's cage. I mean, this is when she was not successful in her last attempt to become pregnant. And the stories, I would come to the conclusion now. So these stories show a fraught relationship with the human and the non-human other. They aren't as easy, loving relationships. None of these human creatures are pets here. The ultimate project of animal studies to facilitate a more egalitarian, multi-species world is indispensable in our times. And no wonder we should make all attempts to forge a relationship with our fellow species, a healthy relationship with our fellow species, but one has to acknowledge the tensions and the vagaries of such a relationship. So we might not need to romanticize that such a relationship would be very easy and loving like you have with your dog at home. So there are moments of concern, there are moments of doubt about animal selfhood, unconscious violence, assumptions and interventions made with the best possible intents gone wrong. So these stories, like others, show the complexity of multi-species relatedness. So one must be very wary of fitting interspecies relationships into any sort of reductive, universal or ethical frame. So I'll leave it there because I don't want to run out of time. So I'll maybe we can discuss as the questions and feedbacks arrives. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Aditi, for such an interesting perspective about how we tend to humanize other animals. I myself being I call myself a biologist, maybe, I don't know, but I work on frogs. and I study the behavior of frogs. But your talk has made me think. I mean, am I trying to understand the behavior from a human point of view or from the frog's point of view? So all your three stories that you had put forward were really very interesting and has made us, it makes us think as are we having preconceived notions about how animals are trying to behave or what they're thinking, and we are trying to judge as per what we think is right for them. So thank you so much, Aditi, for this very interesting perspective and very interesting paper that you have presented. Can we have some questions now? I think already there is some discussion that has started in the group now. I think Miss Priya's presentation was very relevant, and so there is some discussion forum that was already started. Avichal sir, you were asking some question. Would you want to ask it now?
Yes, I actually wrote the question in the chat box for Miss Priya Rampal. So
Yes,
if she could answer it for the entire audience, it will be good. And I also have one question for Miss Aditi Das Khan. I really liked your presentations and the perspective which you presented. So I would just like to ask you that what do you feel about the stories written by Mahadevi Verma? Because she also writes about animals. So do you think they are from a human perspective, or they are also not from a human perspective? Because she has written Neelkant, which is quite famous, then Gillu. So all these stories, what do you think about it?
Maybe Priya ma'am can
maybe
respond first.
Yeah. First, Priya ma'am can respond, and then Aditi can respond.
Okay, yes. So the question on whether I think that cottage industry can help make various products such as paper is a viable option. So there is already some research happening. In fact, in alternate uses of Paralleli, I also mentioned that paper, board, cups and plates also can be used to make from the stubble. So it cannot be used directly. Of course, the stubble needs to be converted into a pulp of some kind. And for that, there is a sustainable technology that IIT Delhi worked upon. So they came up with this, and I think they are in the stage where they are taking this technology to governments and NGOs and hoping that something which is cost-wise viable works out. The cost of setting up something like this is about 25 lakhs, if I'm not wrong. So meeting with these partners who can actually work upon it is something that I'm hoping should happen, because the problem is actually deteriorating, becoming much worse with each passing year. So that technology is there. Whether it can be scaled up and whether it can be used is a question that we have to see. And the viability has to be taken up with the government. So there was another question on coordination issues between center and state governments, and that is completely right. I agree with it, because agriculture itself is a state issue. So it is easy for the government to say that it is a state issue and we are not going to interfere because the stubble burning is a problem that is caused by agriculture. At the same time, though, air is a basic right. And for that, the government has now actually started allocating funds. The equipment subsidy that I spoke about, so that percentage is also distributed between the center and the state. So part of the subsidy is given by the center and another part is given by the state. But I would actually want a greater coordination, and that blame game should stop. Only then the citizens of the country will be able to breathe clean air, which is our basic right. So another question that was posed to me was on machines. So I actually spent a considerable time discussing these machines: Reaper, Happy Seeder, Rotavator. So the problem with these machines are they are effective. Some of them can lead to the mulching, the super straw management system, whose picture also I showed. They are very expensive. To expect each farmer to buy it is a problem. But even if we can motivate the rich farmers to buy it, give them the appropriate subsidies, also train them on how to use it, and then maybe encourage them to rent out the machines to the smaller farmers so that they can also use it. The problem occurs because the window is actually only 15 to 20 days. Now, in that window, that has to be used by a whole by a lot, almost everyone in the village at that time. So having one machine for two or three villages. So the estimate is that Punjab itself needs about 20 to 25,000 of happy seeders. So that happy seeder is about 1.5 lakhs. Even if the subsidy is there, still a lot of money has to be shelled out. So that cost is actually a deterring factor on why these are not as popular, and why I feel that if that 20 rupee capsule is effective, then why that would probably be a better solution than these machines. So if you remember, that picture itself tells you it's a big machine, so it will be very, very expensive. I think these were the questions posed. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you.
Priya, I just wanted to ask one small thing more.
Yes, sir.
Yes, please go ahead.
Yes, ma'am, for example, we have coconut husk, which is again not considered to be something really useful. But nowadays, people have started making scrub out of it so that it can be used as a cosmetic. So can we also think about a similar use for the stubble? Is it possible in any way?
I think it should be possible, because that pulp, from the pulp, a lot of things can be made. And I think a scrubber could be another sustainable use of it. So the cost bit for this, I haven't worked out the paper bit. I concentrated costs for the capsules in this particular paper, but I can actually, I am planning to look at costs of other things that can be looked at. So I will be doing that.
Thank you, Miss Priya. Miss Aditi, would you like to respond?
Right.
Avichal?
Thank you, Ashish sir, and thank you, Avichal sir, for your questions and comments. First of all, as Ashish sir was making this point about if we tend to think about humans think about animals from a human's perspective, I would like to bring in this observation that both anthropo denial and unrealistic anthropomorphism is a problem. So even if we were to deny animals human characteristics, that is a problem of scientific objectivity as well. So for instance, Franz de Waal has an interesting paper called Are We in Anthropo Denial? And he talks about how as this fixation with scientific objectivism has made us deny human characteristics to animals, because we are not supposed to be subjective while dealing with animals, and that is problematic as well. And he details how is it so through various examples in his paper. And about Mahadevi Verma, yes, I've read her memoir called Mera Parivar. It is about her pets, and very interestingly, I mean, my observation about Mahadevi Verma is that unlike the general obliteration of animal histories, Mahadevi Verma is very much concerned with how a particular animal comes to her. For instance, she would detail if an animal has a traumatic past. For instance, there's this hare called Durmuk, a rabbit kid that she adopts, and that rabbit had lost both his parents, and in that case, that particular trauma might have affected Durmuk in a way that he became more hostile than other pets and aggressive towards its fellow creatures. So Mahadevi Verma, in that case, detailing of that history of, I know Nietzsche said, animals are ahistorical beings. Nietzsche possesses a very contrary relationship between animals and history, and he says that their state of forgetfulness is something that we can only envy. We humans might want to be without memory, but we cannot be so. But Mahadevi Verma, on the contrary, details that past, those historical elements of how a pet comes to her and how that past might have affected the animals. So this was my little observation about Mahadevi Verma's Mera Parivar. And of course, I mean, Mahadevi Verma has been always has been a favorite right from school time. Are there any other questions that I...
Yes, Ashish, if there are any questions, or we can conclude the session. Can't hear you. Ashish can't hear you.
Uh,
Unmute yourself.
Sorry.
There's a question from Rishiba ma'am.
There's an observation from Rishiba ma'am, I guess. The relationship between animals and humans reminds me of a story by Ambai, Squirrel, where the squirrel becomes the companion of the narrator during her visits to the library. So that's an observation that Rishiba ma'am had shared.
Thank you for that observation.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Would you like to say something on that, or?
I think I read that story a long back, so I haven't gone back to it for some time now. So probably
Okay.
my comments won't be as discerning, but thank you for that observation anyway.
No issues. Thank you so much. I think it was a very wonderful session, Miss Priya and Miss Aditi. Thank you so much once again. And I think that concludes session 2 of this day 2 of this webinar. And now we can proceed to session 3, which will be chaired by Miss Harpreet Bahari of Department of English. Harpreet ma'am, are you there?
Yeah, good afternoon, Ashish.
Good afternoon, ma'am. Over to you now.
Yeah, thank you so much. Thank you so much, Dr. Ashish. I extend a very warm welcome to all the present, or all present over here. I welcome you to the academic session 5, to the very thought-provoking seminar on man and nature and how we can bring together man and nature. Yes, Bhagwan, anything?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm there, Harpreet. You continue, please.
Yes.
Yeah, Harpreet, let me introduce you to Harpreet. Harpreet is a colleague from SGNT Khalsa. She's been very active in research work and a great colleague. Welcome, Harpreet. Now, on with your session.
Thank you so much, Bhagwan. I thought, we are the host and we don't need an introduction, so I just began, straight away. As I was saying, that all the papers that I listened to since morning were very thought-provoking and very vital to the times that we are going through right now as a result of the disjointedness that one sees between man and nature. Now, I would request, the first paper in this session is by Ms. Shivani Bhatt. She is pursuing her PhD from Ambedkar University, and her paper is titled Listening to the Songs of Nature, an Alternative Standpoint to Understanding Representations of Emotions and Ecology. And the second paper, which I'm really looking forward to, is by Ms. Ragini Kapoor. She is also a PhD scholar at the Department of Modern Indian Language and Literary Studies, University of Delhi. Her paper is going to be on ecological aesthetics, the construction of beauty of nature in Kalidas's works and Sangam literature. So I would request Ms. Shivani Bhatt to please begin with her paper presentation.
I hope I'm audible and visible, ma'am.
Yeah, you are. You're not, I can't see you right now, but yes, you're audible. Yeah,
Okay.
yes.
I hope I am audible now. So I am going to share a PPT, and the bandwidth of the internet is it lags a bit. So I would switch off my video, but the presentation and my voice will be audible.
Yeah, no problem.
Is that fine, ma'am?
Yeah, definitely, no problem.
All right. So before starting with the presentation, I just want to talk about how this entire presentation has brought about such a lot of discourses on the intermingling of literature with ecology. And it is, I think, the most befitting in terms of my own area of research as well as today's presentation. One thing that was pointed out in yesterday's one of the keynote addresses was how important it is to understand that today when we talk about man and nature, it's not just man and nature, it's women and nature as well, because we have to talk about the silencing of nature and as well as the silencing of women. Is why my presentation is exactly on women and nature. And I think I would have wanted Sir to thank Sir for kind of beginning the entire conference with that discourse, because the moment I saw the conference, I was like, why man and nature? Why not women and nature? And again, now I'd begin with my presentation. hope it is visible. I hope it's visible, ma'am.
Yeah, I can't see the screen. I can't see you. It's showing presenting. Maybe there is some lagging in the internet.
It is visible.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
visible?
Yeah, now it is.
Okay. It's a bit, I'm extremely sorry for the lag in the internet today. Okay. So my paper seeks to explore the relationship between the communities of women, in particular Garhwali women. I hail from the region of Garhwal Himalayas, and this is an homage to my grandmother, from whom I heard all the folk songs today I'm going to talk about, and others that I sort of took from the field in my pilot field research. The paper highlights the multi-vocal accounts that represent the cultural practices of the region, as well as that sew together ecology and emotions. The need to reclaim knowledge from the margins, it has been really discussed throughout the conference, not just because of the proximity to nature, but also because it can add to both the corpus of literature as well as to environmental studies. Women of the region of Garhwal, which is the starting point of my research, have a rooted connection with nature, with the soil they so painstakingly till. The folk songs that establish and strengthen such a bond are foregrounded in my analysis. Oral history has the potential to add to the texture of environmental history through its recording of past environments. Or as Steve Nichols observed, the changes in the baseline of resources, or the shifting baseline syndrome. Now, I recall one of the folk songs that was sung to me, and it was about the lamentation that earlier women would visit the forests, drink the sweet water of the banj or the oak tree's roots, and eat its berries. And today, because of commercialization, there has been a change in these resources. The pine cover has replaced the oak cover. So there is this lamentation which is captured in a folk song. Think of any environmental data and think of any data which says, okay, these were the number of oak trees and now they've been reduced down to these many. And think of adding a bit of a texture to that environmental data analysis through an oral song, through oral history. And that is exactly the argument I'm trying to make here. That often we regard orality and often we regard women's experiences as not important enough to be told. But they have the potential to add to such a lot of data which might otherwise look so dry to us. And the region, and the women from the region, and of course, the moment we think of Garhwali women, we think of Chipko movement. Garhwali women have been unself-conscious eco-feminists. I might just say, or they start that entire discourse on ecofeminism in our country. The term we know was coined by Frances E. Debon in her book, Feminism or Death. And her book became a clarion call for women across the globe for an ecological revolution to save Earth from degeneration. Women become the worst sufferers of environmental degradation as well as active agents in the regeneration and protection of the environment. Garhwali women, with their immense eco-consciousness and indigenous knowledge of agriculture, add to the nuances of understanding what ecofeminism actually stands for us. The commercialization of agriculture leads to the erosion of indigenous knowledge systems and livelihood on which these poor rural women depend. Ecofeminists enjoin women also drawing out to other eco-visionaries to work towards fostering a healthy environment and ending the destruction of the land that becomes a crucial basis for their sustenance and subsistence. The entry point, and I'm sure people are wondering, where's the entry point of oral tradition in this debate? The entry point of oral tradition in the debate of ecology and patriarchal capitalism is with its ability to tie communities of women, the solidarity that preserves the culture and natural balance of the region. Garhwali women with their immense eco-consciousness have had this ability to kind of sew together emotion and ecology, and their folk songs become a means to dig deep the embedded meanings that we are to look further on. There have been analysis of folk songs of the region in terms of, I'm sure in Hindi also we study Baramasa Geet. Garhwali and Hindi are extremely related. The script is Devanagari as well. In nature's economy and the sustenance economy, the currency is not money, it is life. For women, it's not just, and in some of the other papers also I heard this umbilical connection between nature and women. But in the case of these women, it's not just this essentialization, this veritable essentialization in terms of nature and Prakriti and Sanskriti being equated with man and women. It's also about the degree of subsistence and sustenance and survival therein. Nature plays a predominant role in shaping and shifting the lives of women. The kernel of experiences, of celebration, melancholy, angst, awareness emanates from an inherent understanding of nature. And now I'm slowly progressing towards how I've culled out different folk songs and how I've analyzed and seen, and how I've analyzed and I'm seeing this interconnection between nature, ecology, emotion, culture. The forms of art become an impetus for self-expression at the individual level and beliefs on a community level. Now, we just talked about the Baramasa songs. It is a synthesis of emotions with the different months of the year. A common trope in literature, the purgation of emotions is paralleled with the changes in national environment. Women's forlorn singing captures a deeply psychological understanding of themselves as individuals hemmed in a society. Women often see in nature the means to express the nostalgia of being away from maternal home, a flux in nature, and an out-and-out awareness of protecting the nature, the environment. Like a thread in a garland, folk songs sew together the lives of women, their feelings and experiences, their connection with the nature, along with consciousness for its conservation. The life cycles of women are centered around and even guided by the agricultural practices, from crop selection to sowing to reaping and harvesting. The amount of toil required changes within different stages of agriculture. Hence, the time when the crop is ripening, women get a little leisure time to return to their maternal homes, as seen in this particular song. The corns ripen with the approaching month of August. Women from villages head to their maternal homes at dusk. So there's this paralleling of the cycle of agriculture with their work cycle. I mean, we constantly talk about the notions of free time and whatnot. And then we also see in here that women have kind of made their own clock accustomed with the agricultural cycle, because they are at the forefront of doing all these agricultural activities. Not only then, folk songs mirror the personal space and the outside, but the intermingling of the two as mutually dependent. Even songs that depict a longing for the maternal home are replete with nature's imagery. Now, we've just been talking about the non-human element, the folkloric signifiers, the animals, the folk songs, and the yearning within the folk songs. For instance, this very popular Garhwali folk songs of Guguti Gurun Lagi Mere Maitki. It talks about how the Guguti bird is making the woman nostalgic of her maternal home. There's a lot of lucidity and beauty within this song. The song is emblematic of the bereavement of the woman, representing through the images of nature, the spotted dove, the seasonal change, the music from the dumps of the orgy, intermingling forces of nature that make the woman nostalgic of her home. Poignantly captures the sense of displacement and pointing. At a time when communication, now I'm again heading back to the same discourse on environmental history and oral history is intermingling. Over here, through oral history, we get to know of the folkloric signifiers too. The nature's clock, I've talked about that. At a time when communication wasn't as convenient as today, the images in nature became interlinked with events in the society, the nature's clock, the season of spring, the blossoming of flowers, the melting of ice caps, make the woman feel that even nature sanctions her yearning for homecoming. I might, pardon me if I say it's like Eliot talking about objective correlative, evoking varied emotions and stimulus from the environment. The downpours in the month of Chaitra are an external manifestation of her heart's downpours when she recounts her maternal home. It's like Chayavad in Hindi. The spotted dove becomes a companion, a harbinger, and its significance in the folklore or culture of Garhwal is associated with auspicious, agreeable happenings. The species is a native range in the Indian subcontinent and Southeast Asia in the region. Its abundance is intermingled with areas of more human settlement than complete wilderness. Hence, the dove, the spotted dove, or guguti bird, becomes a symbol for the woman to be acquainted with the news of her parents and siblings, as it is a folkloric signifier of bringing good news. And in the ecological sense, it is a bioindicator. We talk about indicator species of a salubrious environment or a healthy ecosystem. Again, another folk song that, and this is from the folk artist, and it's her own handwriting here. And again, the pining of the maternal home, and this very predominant folkloric signifiers, which have come across songs. So it became one of the subheads under which I was classifying songs then. Again, the tacit connection. Now I've been talking about connection between nature and women, but I'm also trying to talk about, let's not totally essentialize and also see that there's this element of preservation of nature because it gives you bread and butter. The tacit connection that Garhwali women have with nature is because of their nurturance in the cradle of nature and communities' agrarian association sustaining livelihoods. Beyond a veritable essentialization of the binaries of nature culture with women, man respectively, women enter the domain of the outside, that is culture, through the effective utilization of nature. The intersection of nature orality with gender comes full circle with the sewing together of Garhwali women's agrarian knowledge and traditional agricultural prowess embedded in their lifestyle and therein their folk songs. The community of women have an immense alliance as well as awareness with regard to the conservation of environment. It catapults a consciousness not to harm in. Think of this song, na katyo tyo dalio na katyo, didio dalio na katyo. Don't cut these trees, don't cut them sisters, don't cut these innocent trees. The ecological balance that is disrupted by deforestation is mostly understood by people indulged in the primary sector as these women. Since women's livelihoods are sustained by the resources from forests, their collective efforts are directed at preservation and prevention of its falling. The subject of the song is sisters, as we can clearly see, and not collective address to everyone, as it envisions a movement from within. Such a movement from within communities of women will diffuse in like a concentric circle, resound and touch other women. Their deep ecological ties with surrounding isn't limited to self-sustenance, but to the contribution of eco-ethics with an awareness of environmental conservation, the lessons from nature, and the importance of checks and balances of powers that regulates it. The forests are rejuvenated through revival of the traditional eco-forestry practices and eco-feminist activism taken on by Garhwali women. There are innumerable instances of women organizing themselves without any help from outside, such as NGOs or the government. The relationship of Garhwali women, and I've talked about, dates back to the Chipko movement. And one thing that really resounded across the Himalayas was Aaj Himalaya Jagega, Crude Kulara Bhagega. The Himalayas will awake today, the cruel axe will be chased away. Chipko movement became a movement that made a place for Garhwal to be written in the history for its ability to seam together environmentalism with emotion and activism, torch bearers of which were local women. There are myriad debates around Chipko movements, envisioning conservation and its ability of taking a subversive stance to the idea of development. I constantly also question why is the idea of development so thrust upon the locals? I mean, in the previous session in the morning, there was such an interesting talk about self-help groups, and some of the women have been organizing themselves without the aid of any extraneous party, but within themselves. The ripples of Chipko movement resounded like concentric circles and mobilized women of the regions from Mahila Mandals to self-help groups. The empowerment was unprecedented. Of what began with, of course, Sundarlal Bahuguna as the hero, culminated in Gaura Devi emerging as the champion of the cause, and following the legacy of the movement, and the contagion effect was seen in other movements such as Raksha Sutra, tying a sacred thread, as you can see, and against, say, a stone crushers movement. That was Maletha. Maletha is a village where women collectively opposed stone crushers, as I talked about. While growing up, again, I was told a lot of folk songs, and today I understand their meaning in a more nuanced sense. I would listen to them being hummed and I perhaps would sleep to it, but today I awaken to the amount of meaning that was embedded in those folk songs. There has been an entire category of folk songs which are called Pani Tras Ka Ritu Geet, and they talk about the dam construction activities. One of the songs which became popular was during the TD Dam construction, and a lot of anthropologists and ethnographers from across the globe have seen this activism and lauded this activism. I'm actually summarizing it here. Georgina drew in her essay, Our Bones Are Made of Iron, The Political Ecology of Garhwali Women's Activism, talks about the implications of dam construction projects on a highly revered and culturally significant tributary of River Ganga, that is the Bhagirathi. She subtly points out the leaders, high-profile men, how these high-profile men did exert pressure against the construction of hydroelectric dams, but it was these local activists, and I quote, who sacrificed time, money, and social capital to confront what they believed were unsound projects. And such a threat to livelihood, as well as the continuity of cultural and religious practices that was dependent on religious flows, is also kind of tied to the fact that a woman from a hilly region would be affected more than any woman who from a semi-urban region would perhaps stage protest against the religious and cultural aspect. But here livelihoods are involved as well. One thing about the region of Garhwal is the high rate of out-migration to cities for better opportunities. And it has been a prevalent practice amongst men. Now it has again changed. But such radial out-migration of men made the connection and deepened the connection of women, as well as their dependence on primary sector. They take charge of the earth and the realm beyond it. Over the years, however, villages are getting depopulated due to migration to cities for better resources and opportunities. And if I were to take the personal case of my village, Pauri Garhwal, and within Pauri Garhwal district, Deval is a very small hamlet, and it has now about a population of just 50 people. At such a juncture, I, as a second generation Garhwali woman, feel that the preservation is not just of the ecology, but the culture in a more democratic and holistic sense, which has become imperative. It is not through policy intervention alone, but through the nostalgia of new roots, with an awareness of the present and leaving behind the trails of cultural and ecological legacy for the generation to come. All these elements are, they coalesce and make it so emphatic. The halcyon days in the embrace of the banch trees that my grandmother heavy-heartedly recalled, and through which I started with my paper, the generation could relive them with a consciousness for preservation and awareness for its dissemination in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Shivani. Thanks a lot. Your paper really was, I really found it very interesting. There were a few very pertinent and important questions that were raised by you of looking at the folk songs, as signifiers of mutual dependence, for instance, of women and nature. Also, a very important observation that was raised by you, and which perhaps, we as department are definitely going to consider, and you kind of directed us to maybe another seminar on it, of looking at, women and folk songs and nature, perhaps, and a correlation between them. Also, another point made by you was, I found it very important, was that silences, which you talked about, silences around women and nature, correlating the silencing of women, and how we are now kind of not looking at the aspect of how nature is being exploited, and we are completely silencing its call to us again and again, to be aware. So definitely, a seminar on man and nature, and man being used as a gender neutral term, and maybe, the next time for the seminar, it would not be where we would want to kind of acknowledge the women's potential role, as both creators and as protectors. So thank you once again, Shivani. We have number of comments and observations which are there, but which we will be taking up, after Miss Ragini's paper. Ms. Ragini, are you ready with your paper? So thank you, Shivani. Thank you so much. And we'll be taking up the questions on your paper after Ragini's paper. So, Ms. Ragini Kapoor.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah. Are you ready with your paper?
Absolutely, ma'am. I have a PowerPoint presentation.
Okay.
And I am not sure if I can share the screen yet.
Okay, I think Ms. Nidhi had mentioned in the morning that if you have any problem with your PowerPoint presentation, she can be of some help. Ms. Nidhi?
There's an option of share screen, and I'm present now. So as I'm clicking on it, so it's offering me a few suggestions, your entire screen, a window, a Chrome tab. So as I can see, I can.
Hi, Ragini.
Yes, yes, ma'am.
Have you already got your PowerPoint?
Yes, it's already open on my laptop.
So if you could, right. So just choose share a window. When I give you 3 options, choose window.
Okay, just hold on. Share a window. All right, I have clicked.
And when you choose window.
Oh, certainly, I got the option.
Yeah, and then you
might be the option of your presentation.
And then you click on.
Is it visible now?
Yeah, it's
yes,
perfect.
yes, it is. Yes.
Okay. I hope I'm audible as well.
Definitely. Please continue.
Okay. So,
thank you. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you so much, Nidhi, I guess, for helping me. So, thank you, Department of English and Department of Environment Science and Shri Guru Nanak Dev Khalsa College for providing me this opportunity. And I am Ragini Kapoor. I am pursuing PhD from Department of Modern Indian Languages and Literary Studies, Faculty of Arts, University of Delhi. My supervisor is Dr. D. Uma Devi ma'am. She is an assistant professor of Tamil at Department of MIL and LS. Without further delay, I will start with my presentation. So I have a few important points that I have mentioned in my presentation, but a few other points I would also be referring my paper for them. So I'll begin with the slideshow. Okay, so I'll first of all give a brief background, a very short background of ecological aesthetics and Sangam literature and Kalidasa's works. So ecological aesthetics offers, that is, it frames, presents and suggests a rhetorical practice that attempts to bind communities, local and global, through a commitment to pedagogy and broader access to theories of art, through methods of storytelling that are always both personal and political, even though the art discussed may not always seem as such on first glance. It asks what if one may thoughtfully thought with in this way all the time. Ecological aesthetics does not present a theory of art, but a theory of form, a structure, or a framework. It recognizes and asks to recognize, that is, think again, conceptual material formations around art, thought, and humans, and explicates their implications. It creates narratives on, about, and by the various cross sections of humans, nature, and politics in and as works of art. Ecological aesthetics then takes the being with of people, ideas, and things as its aesthetic framework. Thinking and moving and feeling, matter and concepts and time, humans and nature and politics are all part of the same relational field, creating, transforming, and mobilizing themselves and the others together, that is ecological. So basically, I have referred Kalidasa's works, which are three dramas. This is a part of my PhD work that I am currently working on to reconceptualize eco-criticism via classical framework of Sangam literature and Kalidasa's all works. So for this paper as well, I sort of refer to Kalidasa's three dramas, which are Abhigyan Shakuntalam, Malvika Agnimitram, Vikram Urvashyam, and two Mahakavyas, Kumar Sambhavam and Raghuvansham, and Khand Kavyas, Meghdutam and Ritu Samharam. However, Sangam literature encompasses 2,381 poems, which it is very difficult to talk about in this presentation. And it encompasses Etutokai, which are the 8 anthologies, and 10 ideals, which are termed as Patu Patu. So it is the 18 anthologies, I would say, that encompass 2,381 poems, which are basically written by 473 poets, and 102 have not been named. So because it's all these classical works that I have referred, via these classical works, I have tried to reconceptualize eco-criticism, but here I'd be talking about ecological aesthetics. So my slide one is talking about that the exploration of aesthetics of the constituents of the environment is required, namely artifacts, human activities, social relationships, which determine the quality of life and the state of the world. So basically, aesthetics is though all about talking about beauty and how it can be analyzed. It also encompasses what the constituents of environment are, and we can also go in detail about them. And the artifacts I have written as human activities and social relationships also are included as one of the important factors of ecological aesthetics. And the emphasis of the same has been on the spatial environment, such as a beach or a forest or any area you can consider, which also deals with individual physical objects such as a rock or a tree. The activities that are undertaken within nature by the characters in the classical canon that I have considered of Kalidas and Sangam literature, they symbolize that why it is important to attend to the aesthetics of these physical objects and activities that are performed around them. So if anyone comes to read Sangam literature, which unfortunately is only available in translation in English, and it is available online. I could not gather any English translation in hardbound, but Kalidas's works are available in Hindi and Sanskrit, so you can easily have a grab on them. It is important to find value in these works, as if you ever try to read them, and all the background of Sangam literature and Kalidasa is 90% including nature, and it is through this setting of nature which is very important to consider, and how nature was considered as one of the important setting and only important setting where we could understand why nature is the only factor that on which we depend. So after what Sangam literature and Kalidasa's works, that is his 7 major works and almost 2,000 poems of Sangam literature, they are about is that people are always in process with the world around them. So there is something that is always going on. You are always available to nature, and nature is available for you. Even if they are only a small part of complicated, intricate, and ongoing systems, they are more than the boundaries of what they feel, know, or make. So it is absolutely making an equation with nature, which I think humans have forgotten how to respect nature and how to even stay with nature respectfully. I think that is what is important, that we have to learn from the classical canon of Sanskrit and of Tamil. So ecological aesthetics is surfacing in contemporary art and literary criticism, philosophy, politics, and makes such linkages through thought and felt. Here, ecology is not limited to sorry, here ecological is not limited to its everyday definitions around biological organisms or environmentalism. This is a scientific definition that these in contemporary times we are conferring, but we are understanding, but encompasses thought-felt encounters with relations between all of matter and its ideas, which are energetic, vibrant, vibratory, vital, efflorescent, and lively. So all these are very important things that we can consider. And the scope of environmental aesthetics is also considered as being expanded, and this will be the right time to initiate the relevance of ecological aesthetics. And one way is to address the aesthetic issues that define and make up the environment, as I have referred in my previous slide. Coming to the next part, Kalidasa's works and Sangam literature evoke the realization of human beings' connectedness with nature, which may be termed as the ecological thought. This is what I have understood after reading Kalidasa's works. And Sangam literature, I'm still trying to understand on my own, because I'm also learning Sanskrit and Tamil since the past 2.5 years. And Tamil is since a very new language for me, so it's taking some time. And it may be asserted here that all thoughts are dispersed, generated, interfered with, affected, affective, and affecting in and around that interconnectedness. If we consider these magnum opus of Kalidasa and Sangam poets as considered the best out of classical canon, the works also intensify seemingly at odds connections that exist as people, individuals, things, propositions, and more importantly, the works present how beings move and are moved, continuously changing those relations and thus make themselves and the world around them. So this is a short analyzation after, because I cannot deeply go into all the works that I have considered. So it is a brief outline I have tried to put in my presentation. Okay, so coming to the fifth slide, the link between nature and art is profound and long-standing. I think this is eco-criticism, basically, though it's a literary term, but I think it is a science as well. And as a literature student, I think the link of nature and art is very deep and long-standing. I think we all of are very much aware of this. It is now assumed that nature is nature without any interference from human beings, as we can see, and via I have also been listening to other speakers as well, and they have wonderfully representative how our nature is getting in trouble and what in troubled times that we are living. So if nature can only remain nature without any interference, but we have to live in nature, we can without any disturbing interference as such. So we have to be very careful that even if we are taking something from nature, we give it more. We give it more in return, and we maintain the stability of nature. We do not destroy it as such. So the Sangam age, which I think according to me, see, the Sangam age is basically considered from 300 BC to 300 AD, which is an approximately 600 years. I'm sorry, which is approximately 600 years. And Kalidasa's era is considered, some Sanskrit poets say, some Sanskrit scholars say that the era is around the 8th century, but some say that it is around 7th century. But according to me, what I have taken his era, it is around 8th century, which is around 700 AD. So the Sangam age is unique in South Indian history and culture for its unparalleled creative contribution. It is these 2,000 poems are wonderful. If one gets to read them, I think it is one of the best creations of Tamil literature, and we can connect Sangam literature with all other literatures as well. And its poetics offers many narratives for discursive study. However, the objective here is to point out only how far it affected the concept and interpretation of nature towards an ecological awareness. Now it depends on us. I think in those classical times, in that era, people were I mean, the people who existed, who lived in those times, and the writers who were writing such wonderful works of art, they were not really concerned about how to save nature and what is our contribution, how we should stop getting so worried about pollution and etc. But they were basically highlighting the aesthetic values of every object that was existing in nature. But now the times have totally changed, but it is on us how we take how we learn from those learns, what lessons we take from those works, and that is, I think, maybe termed as ecological awareness. It is on us how we interpret those works and we implement those lessons in our day-to-day lives, and how we learn from them. That is really important. So coming to slide 6, The major themes of Sangam poetry are love and war, accounting for the two broad divisions of Sangam literature as a whole. So these 2,381 poems were basically divided into two broad divisions, which were called Aham and Puram. And the Aham is love poetry and Puram is war poetry. This is a very literal translation that I have written here. And Aham also may mean that you're talking about your internal aspects, what you feel inside, that you are worried, that you are feeling very sad, that you have been separated from your lover, that you are feeling you are missing your beloved. That is all included in Aham section of poetry of Sangam literature. And Puram basically is all about war poetry. War poetry also is highlighting about nature, but I think what in Aham poetry, this is the important section which is talking about nature in detail, which is also the main highlight of my PhD work. So coming to the next sentence, Aham, however, forms the major portion of Sangam literature. The life of a couple of lovers is given its setting in time and place, which is termed as Mudal, its natural background, which is called Karu in Tamil, and then the details of their conduct, Uri, are worked out. So this is just a very brief background of Sangam literature. And also I would also quote Jasudasan and Hepzibah Jasudasan, who have said that we can trace out the life of lovers running through the whole gamut of experiences so provided by the system. This is also happening, that the experiences of lovers in Aham poetry is very important. What one can understand how to live in connection with nature, and also with the another human who is the very important part of your life, who's as the who cannot be termed as a secondary partner. It is like he or she is your you people are existing as one life. That is also a very highlighted section of Aham poetry. Coming to the seventh slide, it is talking about that the poetic world of Sangam poets is one of the correspondences between time, place, and human experiences. A.K. Ramanujan, we all know, he also cites Saussure's view that every sign is a union of signifier and signified. So this is also very important, that we find few of the symbols that exist in nature in Sangam literature, that actually Sangam literature is also such a deep work of art. I would really call it as a work of art, because I think one symbol, one word that is being termed for a particular object that is existing in nature has a lot of meanings, and that is also described in Tolkapiyam, which is the grammatical work of in Tamil language, which also is talking about Ulura and Iraichi. That is, there are different levels of meaning. I think there are 9 stages of meaning in Sanskrit poetics, but also in Tamil poetics, it is Ulura and Iraichi. Iraichi is the flesh meaning, the literal meaning, and Uraichi is the suggestive meaning that you have to, that a reader who is reading Sangam literature talks about. So I will not go into those details. Coming to the second point, in the Tamil system of correspondences, a whole language of science is created by relating the landscapes as signifiers to the Uri or appropriate human feelings. As I referred, that there are various landscapes, there are various objects of nature that are existing, that writers, the poets have taken from nature, and they have given several beautiful meanings to those objects. Like even Kalidasa has referred to various names of flowers, and even to humans he has given several names that he's connecting artificial things with human beings, and there are very symbolic connections that one may find in this classical canon. As I was talking about Tolkapiyam, it is the earliest extant work of literary and linguistic conventions in Tamil that sets the style and framework for the Sangam poets, distinguishes between two kinds of poral. Now what poral is, it is basically Tolkapiyam was comprising of 3 parts. One was Porul, the other was Eluthu, which is called writing, and Soul, which is speech. The Aha Pural and Pura Porul is Porul part is basically 1 part, second part is Eluthu, third part is Soul. The first part Porul is further divided into 2 parts, which are the Aka Porul and Pura Porul, the inner and outer essence of existence, respectively. Love is Aha Pural, that even as I said, was highlighted in Aham section of poetry, while all else belongs to the domain of Puraporal, which may be termed as, external factors that were there, which may be talked about in the Puraporal section. Coming to the 9th slide, it matters relating the matters relating to culture, education, peace, war, and the other outer aspects of social fabric fall within the category of Puram, as I had mentioned, the external factors as such. Now, Ahintanai, or the fivefold categorization of the environment into Kurinji, Mulai, Marutam, Needle, and Palai, these are the 5 types of landscapes that have been defined in Sangam literature. We need not go to the details of these. They are combined with the corresponding flora and fauna. You know, Kurinji, Mulai, Marudam, Needle, Palai, these are like landscapes which are desert. In English, we call them desert, beach, forest, and mountain area. So these are respectively, you know, when you're talking about these landscapes, you're talking about the distinct flora and fauna that are existing there. So that is how, you know, connecting one landscape to one typical form of flora and fauna. So like what flora and fauna we are watching, we are seeing if we are on land, and if we go to mountains, there is distinct type of variety of flora and fauna. So you know, there is a distinction that has been defined by Sangam poets when they are talking about different landscapes and the different flora and fauna that are typically existing there. So there should be seen as the earliest attempt by the Sangam poets towards the formulation of an environmental aesthetics, where the human bhav seeks its correspondence in the natural vibhav. This is very, very important, that human bhav has to include, has to feel related to the natural vibhav. Now, what does this mean? That you cannot feel connected to, you cannot feel, you know, at peace, you cannot feel contented until and unless you are feeling connected to the natural vibhav. That is, when you are feeling, when you are existing in nature. Existing means, does not mean that you are just simply going there and living. You have to feel what is going around yourself. That is the part of what environmental aesthetics and the beautiful connection that you feel with nature. That is what is very important. We see in Kalidasa's works and Sangam literature. Now, A.K. Ramanujan has put that actual objective landscapes of Tamil country become the interior landscapes of Tamil country. So, Tamil poetry. So these landscapes have been talked about in detail. A.K. Ramanujan also translated a few of Sangam literature into English, but that he did not manage to translate all of the works. Coming to the 10th slide. So Aham poetry had to consider as its essential theme one of the 5 aspects of love poetry: chose an appropriate situation and write with the prescribed landscape, the annual season, and the period of day pertinent to the division. The poet had to be particular about choosing similes and metaphors from objects exclusive to the region, as I mentioned in my slides previously, that if you are living in a mountain, you have to be very careful what similes and metaphors you are using while you are living in that region and while you are writing for that region while living in that region. So that is very important. The objects were the gods, food, fauna, flora, music, and other objects that were indigenous to the region. By way of exception, the flora or birds or any of the other objects of one region might be mentioned in a poem of another region, for even nature is not rigorous in her natural divisions as to be so exclusive. This mixing or regional objects was permitted and was known as regional interchange. You could even talk about other landscapes. You could feel, you could bring out connections between various landscapes, but it was very important. These classical poets and writers were very careful about the aesthetic aspect of their writing, which included that you can mix other landscapes. You can talk about different landscapes while you bring out a connection between them. But if you are talking about one landscape, you have to be very careful what regional aspects you are considering while talking about that landscape. Coming to the 11th slide. On the other hand, as I have talked enough about Aham, now I'll talk briefly about Puram poetry, which was the war poetry, or which was the external aspect of Sangam literature that has been highlighted in Sangam literature. So on the other hand, Puram poetics is less demanding. Puram poetry or Puram poetics is less demanding, as its theme itself is foregrounded in the objective. However, it is the Sangam custom to be true to nature. The inner and the outer and the environmental factor is a determinant in the poetic process. You cannot write good poetry, you cannot write a good work of art unless you feel a very good connection, unless you are into nature. You cannot write a good work of art. That is what was their aim. They were trying to achieve, and themselves were trying to describe to their readers. These literary conventions had crystallized over the years much before Tolkappir. Tolkappir was the writer of Tolkappiyam, which is the grammatical work of Tamil literature, as I have talked about in previous slides. Tolkappiyam was written by Tolkappir. So he categorically formulated them in Purulathikaram. Purulathikaram is one of the parts of Tolkappiyam. There are three parts of Tolkappiyam, and one of the parts is Purulathikaram. So he has talked about that in this section of his Tolkappiyam. Certainly, this concern for the interrelationship of nature and human nature needs to be seen in a larger spectrum of significance. This is very, very important. However, I wish I could really talk about this in detail, but I think I would stick to the important aspects. The intrinsic value of the ancient Tamil aesthetic may be pointed here. This is one thing that I would like to highlight, that people should be able to appreciate the significance of their own lives and each decision and action as contributions to the world as a whole, as well as to the culture, societies, ecosystems of which they are part. But they should also be able to appreciate the intrinsic significance of their own lives as such, and that part of the significance of culture, societies, ecosystems is as conditional causes of their own becoming, for having made it possible for them to live an intrinsically significant life. So it is basically, maintaining and retaining that connection, I think, which we as humans have forgotten in contemporary times, which we can take a gist from these classical works of art. And to support such images of becoming and non-becoming in both aesthetic and scientific terms, it is essential to cultivate a reorientation in thinking. This is very important. The environmental movements for over 2 decades have been seriously protesting against woolly-minded orientation of a post-technological world that it seems to be internally misguided by despotic technocracy of science. So it is the technological aspect of science that has really dominated us all, and we have forgotten that it is in nature, it is that existing in nature that we have to learn first. We have to make a very good equation with nature so as to exist in peace with other humans as well, and while with nature as well, because without nature we all know we cannot exist. So environmentally aware critics like Andre Gar argues for alternative measures and directions in the thinking of the dominant Western societies, not towards the triumph of any ideology, movement, nation, and class, but towards the triumph of life. And triumph of life should really mean that you should really reject all the equations of politics and ideologies and movements. Okay, you are protesting, it is very good part that you are doing on your own, but you should focus on the triumph of life, and that includes that you are existing peacefully with nature. That is what Andre Gar was talking about, and he was one of the very good theorists. And coming to my 13th slide, assessing the poetic art of Kalidas, his poetry affirms the convention ends of life, Purusharth, as we say in Hindi. It may be asserted that his works revalidate conventional values and norms of Indian society, pervade through the Vedic and epic literature of the early period. Kalidasa's poetry and drama, in this view, fit into the traditional literary framework and is only meaningful as idealistic expression, as the expression of deep human emotion, portrayal of the facts of life. Owing to this attitude, now Kalidasa, if we go through his 7 works, which are the classical works of Sanskrit literature, we will come to this understanding that he is affirming the conventional art of Sanskrit literature, and it is only through I think he's also referring to Vedic few Vedic and epic literature as well from ancient period, and it is only through his poetry and drama that one can understand what our traditional literary framework has to be. And it's his beautiful language that I think we can come to understand what an idealistic expression should be. If one does not understand Sanskrit, that it is all right, we can read the translations, but if people who are familiar with Sanskrit language, they can get this, that the idealistic expressions are wonderful. I think we cannot find in any other language. So because of this attitude of evaluating Sanskrit literature from a preconceived angle, often motivated by Western concepts of literary thought, little value has been set on indigenous literature. This is very loud and clear that we have been focusing on Western literary theories, but I think more emphasis has to be laid on what indigenous literature is all about. I think not many people are familiar with the Sangam literature because it is not available in translation, and even if it is so, who would read 2000 poems to understand what India Sangam literature is all about. So I think it is very important we get familiar with our indigenous literature, be it from any language, but since Tamil and Sanskrit are one of the ancient languages of the world, considering Latin and Greek as well, so it is very important to learn from their works as well. And its literary criteria, I mean the literary criteria of our indigenous literature, while devoting more attention to the study of religious or linguistic material for its comparative worth. It is not just, just giving a brief reading to that, but it is also important to understand what the linguistic aspects and religious aspects are also included in our classical canon, because all the ancient, the classical poets and writers focused on all aspects of one's life. It was not just ecology, living with nature. They also focus what a good person should be, how a religion should be. There were many religious and different aspects that were touched upon. How politics should be run in the society. So there were very, very important aspects that they talked about in their work. So one single work could talk about politics, religion, and literature, art, aesthetics. Everything was included in those works of art. Coming to the 14th slide, Kalidas amplifies his themes and uses imagery in all its range and depth to develop the nature-related traits, further choosing stereotypical vocabulary evocative of passionate and sensuous nuances. I think I need not to explain this. So the two important aspects of his imagery significant in this respect are animation of nature and portrayal of feminine beauty in terms of beauty in nature. So he gave this animation to nature. It was not that nature is existing as a artificial aspect, or it is not moving. He was giving he was personifying nature. Like I would give a easy example to this, like in Meghdut, cloud acts as a Meghdutam, cloud acts as a messenger for Yaksh, and Yaksh imagines that cloud is somebody who can give my message to beloved, who is Yakshini, who is living in the courthouse of Lord Indra. So he's animating nature, and it is very beautiful how he describes the journey of a cloud, despite knowing that the cloud cannot talk, obviously. So, but the way he has animated cloud, and the way he's animated other flowers and animals. So this is very important, the animation of nature that he has described vividly in his works. Kalidas's poetry manufactures and unfolds varied patterns of imageries based on these analogical concepts. In his works, he chooses to describe either nature or man or a woman, or the two combined, where he irresistibly brings into operation the image-making processes by evoking the sensuous. So sensual erotic aspects are
Ragini, we have a time constraint, so if you could please wind up the paper. I'm really sorry to interrupt you.
Okay. I'll just hurry up. Then I would skip. How much time I am left with, ma'am?
Actually, we have a report session as well, and your papers are going to be followed by questions also from the participants. So we are really running short of time.
Okay, so I will skip the major parts. It's okay. So I'll come to the conclusion that okay, then I'll not talk about Kalidasa and other eco-aesthetical aspects. I'll move on to the conclusion straight away, that the idea of eco-aesthetics certainly have sources in the aesthetics of nature in the 18th and 19th centuries. In that period, the appreciation of and concern for the environment were fostered by the notices of the picturesque in all forms of art. Moreover, the early environmental movements were largely fueled by a mode of aesthetic appreciation. They were not shaped only by the idea of picturesque, but also by the ideas that came out of environmentalism. So we as humans, we got interested in protection and conservation gradually, but certain things are not found in traditional aesthetics of nature, which are necessary in order to carry an environmentalist agenda to save all now and in the near future. So, but the problem is especially acute concerning environments, which are wetlands that need to be saved for the conventional conceptions of scenic beauty. This is my last slide. So the landscape planning and assessment were first focused only on scenic picturesque environments. So I was gradually coming to the how to save the environment, but it's all right, I skipped that part. and attempts are being made to constructively bring together the resources of several different positions, leading towards eclectic and innovative approaches in ecological aesthetics. In this context, the contributions of traditional Indian poets and writers and philosophers have been remarkable. If humanity wants to develop an ecological awareness that could enable them to find out proper ways to love nature and earth, they had to look back to their heritage and equip themselves with what is relevant in the ancient wisdom. We have to learn from ancient works and what they were talking about. And for that, I think we can have a background check on Sangam literature and Kalidasa's magnum opus, and we can learn a lot from those works. Thanks a lot for being patient listeners. I think I'm sorry for crossing the time limit.
Thank you so much, Ragini, for a very interesting and thought-provoking paper on and a very refreshing perspective on the connect between classical canon and the link between nature and man, which has been explored in the works of Kalidasa and the Tamil writers. Also, you very rightly pointed out, that we really need to go for an in-depth, study of our indigenous literature because with various human aspects of life. So we are going back, it's essential for us to look back, at our own culture, at our own indigenous culture and our own literature that has been written, because that we are talking of the same issues, which were discussed perhaps 400, 500 years back. So we are coming back to those issues, related to ecology and related to nature, which are now becoming pertinent and important for us to, important for us today. So with this, I would open the session to any questions. Dr. Indira Kaul had asked a question from Shivani, where she had said that are these songs which you had referred to in your paper presentation, are they available in print?
Yes, ma'am. They have been printed and they have been documented extensively within. I mean, by Indian ethnographers as well as ethnographers like William Socks and Andrew Alter. So they are in print. Some of the books I have are by Keshwadatt Rudali and by Govind Chatak, and Anjali Kapila is one big authority on the images. Her book is called Images of Women Through Folk Songs of Garhwal Himalayas. I happen to meet her often, and her next book on the songs of the Ganges is due to be it's forthcoming actually. The other question, and very interesting question.
Shivani, so sorry to interrupt. Could you give us the names of the publishing houses, at least a couple?
Yes. This is by Sahitya Academy only. The book is called Indian Literatures in Tribal Languages, Garhwali Lokgeet by Govind Chatak.
Thank you.
I even mail these names. These are I read these cover to cover because these are part of my research as well. The other very interesting question, and I think this is one of the most this is the kernel of my analysis whenever I talk about as a second generation Garhwali researcher, and I always have this dichotomy of an insider outsider, because being born and brought up, I still haven't lost touch with my roots. That came through my grandmother, that came through my extended family, to the multiple visits to Garhwal. That's one thing. The other thing is, if one thing that ties our the entire Garhwali communities that are now settled everywhere are folk songs only, and folk songs have been constantly reformulated. And I don't know, I'm sure people must have heard Badshah's song Genda Phool.
Right.
Yes, very popular song. Yes.
Yeah, it's really popular right now. So there is a Pahari version to that, and it has crossed over like 10 million views. No, Paharis and non-Paharis. The other thing I wanted to show was art, if I can. Yes. It'll just take me in a jiffy. I can show that. Yes. Is it visible, ma'am? This is Bhuli art.
No, it's not visible, Shivani. Yeah, it's not.
It's not visible, ma'am.
It is. It's
Oh, okay.
It's visible now.
Yeah.
It's visible now. Is it visible now?
Yeah, it is.
So this, if you can see this, these are traditional Garhwali women. This is sartorially representing us Garhwali women. And this is Bhuli art created by a Garhwali artist. And this girl over here has created a lot of art and icon and calendars and postcards on Garhwali art. Books. So this is how she is. This is her way of kind of reclaiming it. The other
This
thing
girl
is,
looks so much like you. I
there
think that was
was
you only.
something. So, and this this is a model who actually trended a hashtag which was reclaiming the nath. Nath is so central to Garhwali attires and the sartorial aspect. So this model kind of brought the nath into the forefront. The other thing is something I talked about. I hope all that was visible, that I'm constantly switching tabs. The other
Yeah,
thing
that
is,
is, it's visible.
yeah. So this was the take on Badshah's song "Genda Phool," and amongst a lot of other things. I mean, there are a lot of things been made on policies of the current government as well. They've made it into Beti Bachao, Beti Padhao, using Mangal song. Mangal song is the type of Garhwali song only. Connected to nature in terms of pandemic, how to use Sangam. Okay,
Yeah,
that's not my
there's
question. I'm
another
so sorry.
question.
So I think I've pretty much answered.
Yeah, the another
Okay, that's
question which is addressed to Ragini. That question is from one of our students, and the question is, how can we continue to feel connected to nature in times of the pandemic? How to use Sangam literature to retain our connection with nature as we get out of our homes so less? Ragini, the question is to you.
Yes, ma'am. I was actually typing the answer only for that question, and now I have even answered that question. It is a very good question. Thank you for asking that. See, I will not say that it definitely you could feel connections with nature while reading Sangam or Kalidasa's works, but I will not say that you have to use it as some kind of a manual to feel connected with nature. See, it is a these are very disturbing times that COVID in the times of COVID that we are living. But since there is no other option but we can restrict ourselves at home. So I would say that if one cannot go outside, obviously Sangam literature and Kalidasa's works are not suggesting you to go outside to feel the existence of nature. Okay, that is one of the most important ways that you could feel your connectivity with nature, because nature means outside. Nature cannot be felt inside. But if since one has to, I think the only suggestion I could say is that you cannot use it as such as a manual, but it is to understand the literal, metaphorical and suggestive meanings that, and suggestive, by suggestive meanings I mean the hidden meanings that can be achieved only through by crossing several stages. And that is, if you understand the concepts of Ulura and Iraichi, it is only through those concepts that you could understand the suggestive meanings. But if you are familiar with the hidden with the literal and metaphorical meanings of Sangam literature, I think that is enough for you to understand that, for you to provide some sort of catharsis or some sort of rasa delight, that you can that could ease off at least living at home, your existence at home. That is only any kind of literature can do that to you. But once, obviously, if the pandemic is over, what Sangam literature is telling you, I would just simplify it for you, that these 2000 poems are basically what they're talking about is that you have to understand each and every object of nature as if it is living. It is not an artificial object. You have to treat every object as if it were you, as if you were hurting yourself, as if you were helping yourself. That is, you consider the object of nature as yourself, so you won't harm yourself, right? So you will protect it, you will let it exist. So that is what Sangam literature is telling you, that you consider it as yourself, and then you will understand what it would be like to exist with nature as one of your as one of your friends, or as one of your family members. That is what these poets were trying to do, and I think that is what we have forgotten in today's times.
Thank you so much, Ragini. And with this, we come to the end of the academic session 5. Thank you so much. But I thank the paper readers, and I thank all the participants also. Thanks a lot. Thanks, Bhagwan. Thank you so much.
Thank you,
Thank you, ma'am.
Harpreet. Thank you, Harpreet. Thank you, Ragini. Thank you, Shivani, and everyone present. May I request our students, if you're ready with the report, can you read out the report, please?
Good afternoon, everyone. I, Indradeep Kaur, would read the report of the paper entitled Witnessing Nature Through Animation, an Eco-Critical Study of Happy Feet and Mona by Ms. Numana Ibrahim Bhatt. This paper gave us an idea of relating this animated textual world to the social and cultural context. The idea of eco-criticism has been presented through the animated movie Happy Feet and Mona. The ecological issues are addressed in animated films. The paper looked at the genre of animation as a fit for integration of awareness about ecological narrative. Happy Feet, set in Antarctica, the frozen Antarctica landscape in which the human mind might appear a barren wasteland is in reality a thriving ecosystem, gives an insight into the life of penguins. In the paper, we see Mona as an eco-feminist princess. The ocean is seen as a symbol of freedom. Mona is seen living on both worlds, the sea and land, so she is seen as connecting link between environment and human issues. Through Mumble and Mona looked at the connection between human and nature. The paper also investigated the film from the standpoint of ecological imbalance caused by the increasing encroachment and destruction of habitat at the hands of humans. This paper made us see an exemplary portrayal of the ecosystem through these animated movies. Thank you.
Can we have the next one, please?
Yes. Good afternoon, everyone. I, Namanpreet Kaur, would be reading the report on British forest policy and everyday resistance of people, an overview of colonial Darjeeling by Dr. Tahiti Sarkar. The article examined the impact of the 19th century colonial interventions in the forest of Darjeeling and also discussed how it affected the indigenous people. We are told about the protests and subaltern rebellions in the Himalayas between 1817 and 1940. But no such resistance took place in Darjeeling. The notion of nature, as suggested by Dr. Sarkar, is different from the British officials and the indigenous people who consider forest as their natural abode and their means of livelihood, and was certainly not a source of profit extraction. Darjeeling forests were captured by British as they were not entitled to anyone. The barter economy was replaced by the monetary economy and everything was under colonial control. The indigenous voice was suppressed in Darjeeling due to the complex process of migration from Sikkim, Nepal, Tibet, Bhutan. The low population of indigenous people, who are called the Lepchas, resulted in the absence of any intensified conflict between the British and the people. Dr. Sarkar also introduced us to the various acts under the British. By imposing these acts, regulations were imposed on the dwellers of the forest on collection of forest produce. The most serious consequence of colonial forestry was the diminution of customary rights as well as the decline in traditional conservation and management systems. In reorganizing and reshaping the landscape by the colonizers, the Lepchas were seen as a threat and were soon forced to leave their land. The migrants were wage owners and workers and thus couldn't raise any voice. Thus, the paper concluded that Darjeeling witnessed an immense change in environmental landscape under colonization, devoid of any indigenous resistances, and could have never been qualified as a landscape of resistance in colonial period. Thank you.
Yes, next one, please.
Good afternoon, all. I, Ritika Sehgal, would read the report on the paper Tackling Paralleli Burning and Deteriorating Air Quality Index by Dr. Priya Rampal. The paper stated that sustainable environment requires clean air that must be regarded as a fundamental human right related to the right of life, health, and safe, clean, healthy, and sustainable environment. The paper talked about various various sources of air pollution like vehicle, solid fuels, factories, and construction activities. Each year, each year in the month of October to January, the burn air pollution is faced by populace in states like Punjab, Haryana, and UP. The speaker said that due to paddy stubble burning, serious health hazards are caused and it resulted in 30,000 premature deaths in Delhi. So, this is a very alarming figure the paper quoted. During late October and early November in 2019, in Punjab, there was an increase in the air pollution level due to the burning of parali stubble. Soil health get adversely affected due to because of the burning of this rice residue, which resulted in the loss of soil organic matter and plants nutrients. The paper suggested that we can use parali as a fodder and bedding material for kettles, manures, and making biofuels. In order to deal with the problem of parali burning, eco-friendly harvest techniques must be adopted. This paper brought forth the magnitude of the problem of parali burning and proposed a few recommendations on how the issue can be tackled. Thank you.
Thank you, Ritika. Next, please.
Good afternoon, all. I, Kriti Jain, would like to read the report of the paper entitled Storing Animals Some Observation of Short Stories, presented by Aditi Das Khan. To introduce the audience with her paper, the speaker focused on the field of animal studies and recognizing animals legitimate beings with consciousness. Aristotle's view of animal behavior and complexities were briefly described, along with providing us an insight of the fieldwork of 1980s. The work of several scholars such as Derrida, Carivale were also elaborated that imparted the listeners with the idea of animal behavior and human-animal dualism. Further, the speaker, with the example of George Orwell's Animal Farm, pointed out the prioritization of literature towards the study of animal behavior and explored the relationships between human and animals. Quoting the lines from T.C. Baker's Bodies and Text Inform Each Other, she went on to point out different strategies of authors who have worked on the animal stories and also mentioned the behavior of different authors towards writing about animals. Through the instance of the epic Mahabharata, the speaker pointed out the need to prohibit the small acts of cruelty from a young age. Apart from this, through the works of Western writers, as well as religions of Jainism, Buddhism, and Sikhism, we were presented with spiritual transcendence to animals, talking about different scriptures, manuscripts, and both animal studies and effect theory. We were investigated through the dynamics of interspecies relationships. The speaker further illustrated her opinion upon several stories that not only look down upon the relationship with non-human other, but also superlative project of animal studies to facilitate a more egalitarian multi-species work in indispensable time of ecological crisis. Through this paper, the listeners were made aware of the concerns of animal selfhood, conscious violence, supposition, and hindrances. Thank you.
Yes, can we have the next one, please?
Good afternoon, everyone. I, Niharika Agarwal, would read the report of Dr. Shivani Bhatt's paper entitled Listening to the Songs of Nature about an alternative standpoint to understanding representations of emotions and ecology that gave us an insight into cultural ecology of the region of Garhwali women by reflecting upon their lives and experiences, and also that the oral history has the potential to add to the texture of environmental history through its recording of past environment. She also looked at the concept of ecofeminism, coalesces of experiences of exploitation and domination of women with that of environment under patriarchal capitalism. Women in the primary sector are not particularly of one caste or community, but it's a practice that is undertaken because it's a mainstay of subsistence and survival. The paper took into account two things, caste and community, that were not taken as a homogeneous group, rather, women within the agrarian society are taken as a unifying principle and oral dissemination of knowledge and folk songs. The paper also gave us a new perspective on close ties with nature and the tacit connection that Garhwali women have with nature. The reciprocal and interrelated relationship of the aforementioned binaries is understood via folk songs of region. Nature plays a predominant role in shaping and shifting the lives of women. We got to know deeply about Chipko movement and also about the environmental history. Thank
all
you.
the times indicating their situation and are supposed to wear a mundu, which is a royal cloth, which is boiled and placed on the fourth.
Yes. Yes, you can continue, please.
Niharika?
I've finished that.
You have finished that. Do we have the last report? Or are we through? Are we
Yes,
through?
ma'am. Report on the paper.
Yeah.
Hello.
Yes, are we through?
I will be reading report on the.
Yeah, please do.
I will be reading report on the paper entitled Ecological Aesthetics in the Construction of Beauty of Nature in Kalidas Works and Sangam Literature, presented by Ms. Ragini Kapoor. This paper discussed how ecological aesthetics and Indian aesthetics have expanded the scope of art-centered discourse, how the exploration of artifacts, human activities, and social relationship is determining the quality of life, and the need to globalize the ecological aesthetics to include rich aesthetic tradition of nature and environment from diverse cores. We also got to know how the link between nature and art is profound. The paper further discussed about the broad division of love and war in Sangam literature and how the love poetry forms the major portion of Sangam literature. A glance at Puram poetry would reveal that it was less limited by the natural landscape than was Akkam. However, it was Sangam custom to be true to nature. Further paper talked about how about the environmental protest against post-technological world that seems to be misguided by despotic technocracy of science. The latter part of the paper talks about the works of Kalidas and how he shows that nature has a life of its own. His language is capable of depicting many moods. Kalidas uses imagery to develop nature related traits. The important aspects of imagery are animation of nature, and portrayal of feminine beauty in terms of beauty in nature. He also attempts to see the resemblance between feminine features and natural phenomena. Kalidas shows love in all stages of development and growth. The paper concluded by telling how landscape planning and assessment was focused only on scenic picturesque environment, but to bring ecological awareness, human needs to look back to their heritage and equip themselves with what is relevant in their ancient wisdom. Thank you.
Thank you, children, so much. Thank you, Indradeep, Namanpreet, Ritika, Kriti, Niharika, Rachna. I hope I've not missed anyone. The reports were very well structured, and really we could recapitulate the whole paper itself. Thank you so much.
Bhagwan, thanks to Tavleen.
Yeah. Okay.
Who has
Thank you.
overlooked it all.
Yes. Yes. Thanks, Indra, for reminding me. Thank you, Tavleen, for the special pains you must have taken. Thank you. And may I request my young friend Ashish Thomas to please give us a vote of thanks.
Thank you so much, Bhagwan ma'am, for this opportunity to propose the vote of thanks. Am I audible?
Yeah, you are. You are.
Right, thank you. It's been such an engaging webinar over these 2 days. We have touched upon so many interesting topics and perspectives related to eco-criticism, which have been really thought-provoking and enthralling. On behalf of the organizing committee, I would first like to express our sincere gratitude to Dr. Gurmohinder Singh, respected principal of our college, for his unwavering support in every aspect of organizing this webinar. We are highly indebted to all our expert speakers who graced the opening sessions over these 2 days. Professor Charanjit Singh Shah, Professor Murli Sivaramakrishnan, Dr. Pankaj Seksaria, and Mr. Kalyan Paul, all of whom accepted our invitations promptly and took out time from their busy schedules and shared their expert views, opinions, and knowledge with us all that really set the tone for the webinar. Their inputs were so much invaluable. Unfortunately, we couldn't get much time to interact with them. due to time constraints, but I'm sure that the knowledge and experiences that they shared will inspire us all in different ways. Special thanks to all the speakers who presented their research papers during these 5 academic sessions. We have to say that every research work was very well conceived, planned, executed, and presented. All papers were well received by the audience and led to stimulating and fruitful discussions. This being an online platform, there were certain constraints and technical issues, but thank you for being patient and for coordinating with the organizers for ensuring that things went on smoothly. The students who conducted the reporting on the concluding sessions on both days deserve a special mention. Thank you so much for a comprehensive and immaculate summary of all the sessions, which also was read out in a very confident and clear manner. You have impressed one and all. Thank you to all the participants for attending this webinar over these 2 days. You have been a wonderful audience, patient, punctual, and highly enthusiastic. Your presence was indeed a great morale booster for all of us. Really hope that this webinar was a great learning experience for each one of us and that all the participants have something or the other to take back from here. Last but not the least, thanks to all the members who have worked in different capacities to make this webinar a great success. It was a team effort all the way, from selecting such an interesting and wonderful theme for this webinar to choosing the right experts, for going through so many papers that were received and selecting the best out of them, for those giving technical, management, and other background support, and to all those who chaired the various sessions. Thank you one and all for every kind of assistance and support rendered throughout the last 1 month. Thank you so much once again. Pardon me if I have missed someone. Over to you, Bhagwan ma'am.
Thank you, everyone. We disperse from here with the promise to meet again. Now you can go and enjoy your lunch.
Thanks to the 3 conveners, Bhagwant ma'am, Geeta ma'am, and Ashish. Special thanks to all
Thanks,
three of you.
Indra, and thanks my department for being there. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, ma'am.